Whoever said the woods are peaceful at night has never truly listened. Not really. Not when the wind dies down and the only thing you can hear is your own heartbeat, thumping in your ears, and the distant, almost imperceptible sound of something moving just beyond the reach of your flashlight. I used to think camping was about disconnecting from the world, about finding yourself in the silence. But the truth is, sometimes the silence finds you first, and it doesn't let go. That I'm not here to scare you for the sake of it. I'm here because I need to tell you what happened to me and to others in those woods. Stories that never made it to Reddit. Stories that moderators would delete for being too disturbing or too unbelievable. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And if you're thinking about camping in those woods, if you're even considering it, maybe this will make you think twice. It started with a dare. Isn't that how these things always begin? My friend group, a tight-knit circle of 5, had been planning a camping trip for months. We were all in our mid-20s, most of us working remote jobs, and we needed a break from the endless cycle of screens and notifications. The idea was simple. 3 nights in the heart of the Black Hollow Forest, a place with a reputation for being untouched, pristine, and, if you listen to the locals, cursed. Of course, we laughed that off. We were city kids, raised on horror movies and urban legends. We thought we were immune. The first night was uneventful, almost idyllic. We set up camp near a small creek, the kind that babbles just loud enough to drown out the distant hum of the highway. We built a fire, roasted marshmallows, and told ghost stories that felt silly in the warm glow of the flames. I remember thinking how perfect it all was, how the air smelled like pine and earth, how the stars seemed to multiply the longer you stared at them. We were invincible, or so we thought. It was the second night when things started to change. The air felt heavier, the woods quieter. Even the creek seemed to hush itself, as if it knew something we didn't. We tried to brush it off, blaming our unease on too much whiskey and not enough sleep. But as the fire died down and the darkness pressed in, I noticed something strange. The woods weren't just quiet, they were listening. I know how that sounds. But there's a difference between silence and the kind of quiet that feels alive, that feels like it's waiting for you to make a mistake. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the crackle of the last embers and the soft breathing of my friends as they drifted off in their tents. But sleep wouldn't come, not with that feeling crawling up my spine. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone drumming their fingers on a hollow log. At first, I thought it was one of my friends, maybe getting up to use the bathroom. But the sound was too deliberate, too measured. It moved around the perimeter of our camp, never getting closer, never fading away, just circling. I sat up, heart pounding, and reached for my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but trees and shadows. I called out, quietly at first, then louder. "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. The tapping stopped. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it. But then, from the other side of the camp, I heard a whisper. Not words, just the unmistakable sound of breath moving through lips. It was so close, I could feel it on my skin. I froze, every muscle in my body tensed. I wanted to wake my friends, to tell them something was wrong, but I couldn't move. It was as if the woods themselves were holding me in place, daring me to make a sound. The whisper faded, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves. I waited, counting the seconds, until finally, the normal sounds of the forest returned. Crickets, the creek, the distant hoot of an owl. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild. But I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Did anyone else hear weird noises last night? I asked, pouring myself a cup of gritty camp coffee. My friend Sam, always the skeptic, rolled his eyes. Dude, it's the woods. There's always weird noises. The others nodded, but I could see the unease in their eyes. We all felt it. even if no one wanted to admit it. We spent the day hiking, trying to shake off the night before. The forest was beautiful in the daylight, all dappled sunlight and mossy rocks. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, a flash of white, a shadow darting between the trees. I told myself it was just deer or maybe a fox, but deep down I knew better. That afternoon, we stumbled across something that made my blood run cold. It was a circle of stones, perfectly arranged, with strange symbols carved into each one. In the center, a pile of animal bones, bleached white by the sun. Sam, ever the brave one, poked at the bones with a stick. "Probably some weird hunter thing," he said, but his voice was shaky. We took a few pictures, joked about summoning demons, and moved on. But the image stuck with me, burned into my mind. That night, the woods felt different. The air was colder, the darkness thicker. We built our fire higher, huddling close as if the flames could protect us from whatever was out there. No one wanted to admit it, but we were scared. Really scared. As the night wore on, the noises returned. Not just tapping this time, but footsteps, soft, deliberate, circling our camp. I tried to convince myself it was just animals, maybe a raccoon or a coyote, but the footsteps were too heavy, too human. Every so often, they'd stop, and we'd hear that same whisper, so close it felt like it was inside our head. Around midnight, Sam snapped. He stood up, flashlight in hand, and shouted into the darkness, "Whoever you are, just leave us alone." His voice echoed through the trees, swallowed by the night. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, from the darkness, came a laugh. Low, guttural, not quite human. It sent chills down my spine. We huddled together, too scared to move, too scared to sleep. The footsteps continued, sometimes close, sometimes far. At one point, I thought I saw a figure standing just beyond the firelight, a tall, thin shape with eyes that glowed in the darkness. I blinked and it was gone. The next morning, we found footprints around our camp. Bare feet, impossibly large, with long, claw-like toes. The stones from the circle we'd found the day before were arranged around our fire pit, the symbols facing inward. In the center, a fresh pile of bones, this time, not animal. We packed up and left that morning, abandoning most of our gear. We didn't speak on the hike back to the car, each of us lost in our own thoughts. When we finally reached civilization, we made a pact. Never speak of what happened, never go back to those woods. But I can't keep that promise. Not after what I've learned since. Because our story isn't unique. Over the years, I've collected dozens of accounts from people who camped in those woods and came back changed, if they came back at all. Stories that never made it to Reddit. Stories that were deleted, buried, or dismissed as fiction. But they're real. I know they're real. Take, for example, the story of Emily and her brother, Mark. They went camping in Black Hollow a year before we did. According to Emily, the first night was uneventful, just like ours. But on the second night, they heard singing, soft, melodic, coming from deep in the woods. Mark wanted to investigate, but Emily convinced him to stay put. The singing grew louder, closer, until it was right outside their tent. Then, suddenly, it stopped. In the morning, they found strange symbols carved into the trees around their campsite, and Mark had deep scratches on his arms, as if he'd been grabbed by something in his sleep. Or the story of the park ranger who disappeared without a trace. His last radio transmission was garbled, but the words, "It's not alone," were clear. They found his truck abandoned at the edge of the forest, the doors wide open, the keys still in the ignition. No sign of him was ever found. There are more stories, too many to ignore. Stories of people hearing voices calling their names, of seeing figures in the trees, of waking up miles from their campsites with no memory of how they got there. Some say the woods are haunted. Others say there's something ancient living there, something that doesn't want to be found. I don't know what's out there. All I know is that I'll never go back. And if you're smart, you won't either. You might think these stories are just the product of overactive imaginations, or maybe the result of too many horror movies and not enough sleep. I used to think that, too. But the more I dug, the more I realized there was a pattern, something that went deeper than coincidence or campfire tales. The woods have rules, and those who break them rarely come back the same. After our trip, I became obsessed. I started searching for any mention of Black Hollow Forest online, but most of what I found was sanitized, the kind of stuff you'd see on a tourist brochure. A pristine wilderness, perfect for hiking and camping. But every so often, I'd stumble across a post or a comment that hinted at something darker. Most of them were deleted within hours, but I learned to take screenshots to save what I could before it vanished. One night, about a month after we got back, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was simple: "You saw it, didn't you?" The message was short, just a few lines, but it sent a chill down my spine. I saw it too. 2017, my brother didn't make it out. If you want answers, meet me at the old ranger station. Midnight. Come alone. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend none of this was real. But another part, the part that couldn't sleep, that replayed those nights in the woods over and over, needed to know the truth. The old ranger station was about an hour's drive from my apartment, tucked away at the edge of the forest. I left just after 10 p.m., the roads empty and silent. As I drove, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something following me. The closer I got to the woods, the heavier the air felt, as if the forest itself was pressing in on me. When I arrived, the station was dark, the windows boarded up, the paint peeling from the walls. I parked a few yards away and killed the engine, letting the silence settle around me. For a moment, I considered turning back, but then I saw a figure standing by the door, silhouetted against the moonlight. He was tall, thin, with a gaunt face and eyes that looked like they hadn't seen sleep in years. He introduced himself as Alex. His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "You got my message?" he asked. I nodded, suddenly aware of how alone we were. "What happened to your brother?" He looked away, jaw clenched. "He broke the rules. That's what happens out here. You break the rules, and it finds you." I asked him what he meant, and he told me his story. He and his brother, Daniel, had been camping in Black Hollow for a weekend. The first night was fine, but on the second, they found a small wooden box buried near their campsite. Inside were scraps of paper, each one covered in strange symbols and warnings. "Don't look at it. Don't speak to it. Don't follow the singing." Daniel thought it was a joke, some kind of elaborate prank. He laughed it off, even as Alex begged him to take it seriously. That night, they heard the singing, soft at first, then louder, closer. Daniel, emboldened by whiskey and bravado, left the tent to investigate. Alex tried to stop him, but Daniel was already gone. He never came back. Alex searched for hours, calling his brother's name, but the only answer was the echo of his own voice. At dawn, he found Daniel's flashlight at the edge of a clearing, the batteries drained, the lens cracked. There were footprints in the mud, bare, elongated, with claw marks at the toes. Alex followed them for a while, but they disappeared into the undergrowth. He never saw his brother again. He paused, staring into the darkness beyond the station. "It's not just a story," he said. "There's something in those woods. Something old. It plays with you, tests you. If you break the rules, it takes you." I asked him about the rules, desperate for anything that might make sense of what I'd experienced. He listed them off, one by one, his voice trembling. 1. Don't leave the campsite after midnight. 2. Don't answer if you hear your name called from the woods. 3. Don't follow the singing. 4. Don't look into the trees after dark. 5. If you find a circle of stones, leave immediately. 6. Never, ever break the circle. I thought back to our trip, the circle of stones, the singing, the footprints. We'd broken almost every rule without even knowing it. Alex handed me a small notebook, its pages filled with notes, sketches, and more warnings. "Take this," he said. "If you ever go back, you'll need it." I promised him I wouldn't. But as I drove home that night, the notebook burning a hole in my backpack, I knew I couldn't let it go. I needed to know more. Over the next few weeks, I pored over the notebook, cross-referencing Alex's notes with the stories I'd collected. Patterns began to emerge. Dates, locations, even descriptions of the thing in the woods. Tall, thin, with glowing eyes. Sometimes it sang, sometimes it whispered. Always, it watched. I started reaching out to others who'd posted about Black Hollow, hoping to find more survivors. Most never responded. A few sent cryptic replies, warning me to stop digging. But one, a woman named Grace, agreed to meet that we met at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Grace was in her early 30s, with a nervous energy that made her seem younger. She told me she'd gone camping in Black Hollow with her girlfriend, Mia, 2 years earlier. They'd heard the singing, too, but what stuck with Grace was the feeling of being watched, of something moving just out of sight. But on their second night, Mia disappeared. One moment she was sitting by the fire, the next she was gone. Grace searched for hours, calling her name, but the only answer was the wind. In the morning, she found a circle of stones around her tent, the symbols carved deep into the earth. Mia was never found. Grace showed me a scar on her arm, a long, jagged line that ran from her wrist to her elbow. "I don't remember how I got it," she said. "But when I woke up, it was there, like something marked me." I asked her if she'd seen the thing in the woods. She shook her head. "I never saw it, but I felt it, like it was inside my head, whispering things I couldn't understand." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of her story settling between us. Finally, she looked at me, eyes wide and haunted. "Don't go back," she said. "Whatever you do, don't go back." But I couldn't stop. The more I learned, the more I needed to know. I started mapping the stories, plotting them on a map of the forest. The circles of stones, the disappearances, the sightings, they all clustered around a single area, the heart of Black Hollow, a place the locals called the Vale. No one went there. Not hikers, not hunters, not even the rangers. The few who tried never came back. That I became obsessed with the Vale, reading everything I could find. Old newspaper clippings, police reports, even folklore from the local tribes. The stories were always the same. A place where the world grew thin, where something ancient waited in the shadows. One night, I received another email. This one was different. No subject line, no sender. Just a single sentence. "You're getting too close." I tried to trace the email, but it was routed through dozens of servers, impossible to track. For the first time, I felt real fear, not just for myself, but for the people I'd spoken to, the ones who'd trusted me with their stories. That I decided to take a break, to step back before I lost myself completely. But the woods weren't done with me. A week later, I woke to find a circle of stones on my front porch, the symbols carved deep into the concrete. In the center, a single, bleached animal bone. I moved out of my apartment that day, leaving everything behind. But no matter where I went, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear tapping at my window, or the soft, melodic sound of singing drifting through the darkness. That I started having nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams of the woods, of being chased by something I couldn't see. In the dreams, I'd always end up at the edge of a clearing, the circle of stones waiting for me. Sometimes, I'd see my friends there, their faces twisted in fear, their eyes glowing in the darkness. I tried to warn them, to tell them what I'd learned. But they didn't want to hear it. Sam moved to another state, cutting off all contact. The others stopped returning my calls. I was alone, haunted by memories I couldn't escape. But I wasn't the only one. One night, I received a call from Grace. She sounded frantic, her words tumbling over each other. "It's back," she whispered. "I saw it. Outside my window. It's coming for me." I tried to calm her down, to tell her it was just a nightmare. But deep down, I knew she was telling the truth. The next day, I saw the news. A woman had been found dead in her apartment, the cause listed as unknown trauma. The police report mentioned strange symbols carved into the walls and a circle of stones on the floor that I knew, without a doubt, that it was Grace. After that, I stopped sleeping. I spent my nights researching, trying to find a way to break the cycle. But the more I learned, the more hopeless it seemed. The thing in the woods wasn't just a story, it was real, and it was spreading that I started seeing the symbols everywhere, on buildings, in alleyways, even scratched into the bark of trees in the city park. It was as if the woods were reaching out, pulling people in, one by one. That I realized then that the only way to stop it was to go back, to face whatever was waiting in the veil. I didn't know if I'd survive, but I couldn't let anyone else get hurt. So I packed my bag, grabbed Alex's notebook, and drove back to Black Hollow. The forest was waiting, silent and watchful, as I stepped into the darkness. The drive to Black Hollow felt different this time. The first time, I'd been with friends, the car full of laughter and music, the air buzzing with anticipation. Now, I was alone. The only sound, the low hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of static on the radio. The sky was overcast, the clouds hanging low and heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I parked at the same trailhead we'd used before, the lot empty except for my car. The forest loomed ahead, dark and silent, the trees pressed close together like sentinels guarding a secret. I hesitated, my hand on the door, heart pounding in my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to leave and never return. But I couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. I shouldered my backpack, double-checked the contents, Alex's notebook, a flashlight, extra batteries, a hunting knife, a first aid kit, and enough food and water for 2 days. I'd left a note with a friend, just in case, telling them where I was going and when I'd be back. It felt like a flimsy lifeline, but it was all I had. The trail was overgrown, the path barely visible beneath a thick carpet of leaves and moss. The air was cool and damp, the scent of earth and decay heavy in my nostrils. Every step felt like a descent, as if I was moving deeper into another world. That I followed the map I'd made, using the landmarks from the stories I'd collected, the twisted oak, the fallen log, the creek that ran red with iron. Each one felt like a checkpoint, a marker on the way to something I couldn't name. As I walked, the forest seemed to close in around me. The trees grew taller, their branches intertwining overhead, blocking out the sky. The light grew dim, the air thick and still. I kept moving, my footsteps muffled by the mossy ground. After an hour, I reached the first circle of stones. It was just as I remembered, perfectly arranged, the symbols carved deep into the surface. I stopped, heart racing, and took a picture, careful not to step inside. The air felt colder here, the silence deeper. I could feel eyes on me, watching from the shadows. That I moved on, following the path deeper into the woods. The stories had all pointed to a clearing at the heart of the forest, a place where the rules didn't apply. The veil. I didn't know what I'd find there, but I knew I had to see it for myself. The further I went, the stranger the forest became. The trees twisted into impossible shapes, their trunks gnarled and blackened. The ground was littered with bones, small animals, birds, even the occasional deer skull, bleached white and grinning up at me from the undergrowth. I tried not to think about what could have done this, focusing instead on the path ahead. But the feeling of being watched never left me. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, a flash of white, a shadow darting between the trees. I told myself it was just my imagination, but I knew better that as dusk began to fall, I found a place to set up camp. I chose a small clearing, far from any circles of stones or strange markings. I built a fire, the flames casting long shadows across the ground. The warmth was comforting, but it did little to chase away the feeling of unease that I ate a cold meal, my appetite gone, and pulled out Alex's notebook. I flipped through the pages, reading his notes and sketches, searching for anything that might help. One entry caught my eye. If you hear the singing, cover your ears. If you see the eyes, look away. If you feel the cold, run. I read the words over and over, trying to commit them to memory. I didn't know if they would save me, but they were all I had. As night fell, the forest grew impossibly dark. The fire seemed small and fragile, a tiny island of light in a sea of shadows. I sat with my back to a tree, knife in hand, listening to the sounds of the woods. First, there was nothing, just the crackle of the fire and the distant call of an owl. But as the hours passed, the noises began. Soft at first, barely more than a whisper, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the faint sound of footsteps circling the camp. That I tried to stay calm, reminding myself of the rules. Don't leave the campsite after midnight. Don't answer if you hear your name. Don't follow the singing. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I gripped the knife tighter, my knuckles white. The fire flickered, casting strange shapes on the trees. I could feel something moving just beyond the light, watching, waiting. Then, I heard it, a soft, melodic singing, drifting through the darkness. The voice was beautiful, haunting, impossible to ignore. It called to me, promising safety, warmth, escape from the fear that gripped my heart. That I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. The singing grew louder, more insistent, until it was all I could hear. I rocked back and forth, whispering to myself, trying to drown it out. After what felt like hours, the singing stopped. The silence was deafening, pressing in on me from all sides. I opened my eyes. The fire burned low, the shadows creeping closer. I checked my watch, 2:13 a.m. I'd made it through the worst of the night, but I knew I couldn't let my guard down. Suddenly, I heard my name, whispered from the darkness. Eli, Eli. It was my mother's voice, soft and familiar, filled with love and concern. For a moment, I almost answered, but I remembered the rule. Don't answer if you hear your name. That I stayed silent, heart pounding, as the voice grew more desperate. Eli, please. I need you. Help me. Tears streamed down my face as I fought the urge to respond. The voice faded, replaced by a low, guttural laugh that sent chills down my spine. The footsteps returned, circling the camp, faster now, more frantic. I could see shapes moving in the shadows, tall and thin, with eyes that glowed in the darkness. That I gripped the knife, ready to fight, but the shapes never came closer. They watched, waiting, testing me. As dawn approached, the noises faded. The shapes melted into the trees. The singing stopped, the voices silenced. The fire burned out, leaving only ashes and the faint glow of the rising sun. That I sat in the clearing, exhausted, my body trembling with fear and relief. I'd survived the night, but I knew it wasn't over. That I packed up my camp, careful to leave no trace, and continued deeper into the woods. The air grew colder, the trees denser, the light dimmer. I followed the map, my footsteps echoing in the silence. After an hour, I reached the edge of a clearing. The ground was bare, the grass dead and blackened. In the center stood a massive stone altar, covered in symbols and dried blood. Circles of stones surrounded the altar, each one perfectly arranged. That I approached cautiously, every nerve on edge. The air was thick with the scent of decay, the silence absolute. As I reached the altar, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Carved into the stone was a single word: welcome. I stepped back, heart racing, as the air grew colder. The shadows deepened, the trees seemed to close in around me. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, knife raised, but there was no one there. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until I could feel breath on the back of my neck. I turned, and for the first time, I saw it. The thing in the woods was tall, impossibly thin, its skin stretched tight over long, twisted bones. Its eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light, its mouth a gaping maw filled with rows of jagged teeth. It moved with an unnatural grace, its limbs bending in ways that defied logic. That IT stared at me, unblinking, as if weighing my worth. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The thing reached out a long, clawed hand, its fingers brushing against my cheek. That a wave of cold washed over me, seeping into my bones. I felt my mind slipping, memories flashing before my eyes, my friends, the campfire, the circle of stones. The thing leaned in, its mouth inches from my ear. "Leave," it whispered, its voice a chorus of 1,000 lost souls. "Or stay and become one of us." I stumbled back, tripping over a stone, falling to the ground. The thing watched, its eyes never leaving mine. That I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, and ran. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I was miles from the clearing. As I ran, I heard the singing again, softer this time, fading into the distance. That I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the forest, the sunlight breaking through the trees. I collapsed, gasping for breath, tears streaming down my face. I'd made it out, but I knew I'd never be the same. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that I left Black Hollow behind and never looked back, that the nightmares faded and the world returned to normal. But the truth is, the woods never really let you go. They follow you, like a shadow you can't shake, a cold breath on the back of your neck when you're alone in the dark. The days after my escape blurred together. I slept in fits and starts, waking to the echo of singing in my ears. The memory of glowing eyes burned into my mind. I tried to tell myself it was over, that I'd survived, but every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that clearing, the thing's voice whispering in my ear. That I tried to go back to my old life. I went to work, met friends for coffee, tried to laugh at their jokes. But I was different now. I jumped at every sound, flinched at every shadow. My friends noticed, but I brushed off their concern, telling them I was just tired, just stressed, but the signs were everywhere. I started seeing the symbols from the stones, on the sides of buildings, scratched into park benches, even drawn in the condensation on my bathroom mirror. At first, I thought I was imagining things, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But then I started getting messages, anonymous emails, texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Always the same warning: you shouldn't have gone back. One night, I woke to find a circle of stones on my bedroom floor, the symbols carved deep into the wood. In the center, a single, bleached animal bone. I swept it up, threw it away, but the next night, it was back. No matter what I did, I couldn't get rid of it. I started researching, desperate for answers. I dug through old newspaper archives, police reports, anything I could find about Black Hollow. The stories went back centuries, tales of disappearances, strange lights, voices in the night. The locals called it the Veil, a place where the world grew thin, where the dead could reach through. I found a forum hidden deep in the web, where people shared their experiences. Most were dismissed as hoaxes, but some felt real, too real. Stories of people who'd gone into the woods and come back changed, haunted by something they couldn't explain. One post caught my eye. It was from a user named Watcher in the Woods. The message was simple: if you've seen it, you're marked. It will follow you. The only way to break the cycle is to return what was taken. I messaged the user, desperate for more information. Hours passed before I got a reply. Meet me at the old church on Hollow Road. Midnight. Come alone. I almost didn't go. Every instinct told me to stay away, to let it go. But I couldn't. I needed answers. The church was abandoned, its windows shattered, the roof caved in. I parked down the road, the night air thick with fog. As I approached, I saw a figure standing by the door, their face hidden in shadow. "You came," they said, their voice low and rough. I nodded, my hands shaking. "What do you mean? Return what was taken?" The figure stepped into the light, revealing a woman in her 40s, her eyes hollow and tired. The woods take something from everyone who enters. Sometimes it's a memory, sometimes a person, sometimes it's your soul. If you want to break the cycle, you have to give it back. I told her about the circle of stones, the symbols, the thing in the woods. She listened, nodding, as if she'd heard it all before. "You're marked now," she said. "It will follow you, no matter where you go. The only way to stop it is to return to the woods and leave an offering. Something that matters to you. Something you're willing to lose." I asked her what she'd left behind. She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "My son, he never came back." The weight of her words settled over me, heavy and cold. I didn't know what I could offer, what would be enough to satisfy whatever haunted those woods. But I knew I had to try. I spent the next day preparing. I packed a bag with food, water, and the things that mattered most to me. A photo of my family, a letter from my first love, the watch my grandfather had given me before he died. I didn't know if it would be enough, but it was all I had. That night, I drove back to Black Hollow. The forest was waiting, silent and watchful, the trees pressed close together like a wall. I parked at the trailhead, the same spot as before, and stepped into the darkness. The path was harder to find this time. The forest thicker, the air colder. Every step felt like a struggle, as if the woods themselves were trying to hold me back. I pushed on, following the map in Alex's notebook, my flashlight cutting a narrow path through the shadows. After what felt like hours, I reached the clearing. The altar was still there, the circles of stones perfectly arranged. The air was thick with the scent of decay, the silence absolute. I knelt by the altar, my hands trembling, and placed my offerings in the center. The photo, the letter, the watch. I whispered a prayer, not sure who I was praying to, and waited. For a long time, nothing happened. The woods were silent, the darkness pressing in on all sides. I started to think it was all a mistake, that nothing would change. Then, I heard the singing. It was softer this time, almost gentle, but it filled the clearing, wrapping around me like a shroud. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to follow it, to let it lead me deeper into the woods. The air grew colder, the ground trembling beneath my feet. I opened my eyes and saw the thing in the woods, standing at the edge of the clearing, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It watched me, unblinking, as if weighing my worth. Then, slowly, it stepped forward, its movements fluid and unnatural. It reached the altar, its long fingers brushing over the offerings. For a moment, it seemed to consider them, its head tilting to one side. Then, it looked at me, its eyes burning with an ancient, unknowable hunger. "Is this enough?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The thing stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then, it nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. The singing stopped. The air grew warmer, the darkness receding. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a sense of relief so profound it brought tears to my eyes. The thing stepped back, melting into the shadows, its eyes the last thing to disappear. I stayed in the clearing for a long time, afraid to move, afraid to break the fragile peace. When I finally stood, the altar was empty, my offerings gone. I made my way back through the woods, the path easier to find, the air lighter. The symbols were gone, the circles of stones broken. When I reached my car, the sun was rising, the sky painted with streaks of pink and gold. I sat behind the wheel, exhausted, and wept. I wish I could say that was the end, that the woods let me go and I was free. But the truth is, some scars never heal. I still see the thing in my dreams, still hear the singing when the night is quiet. But the circles of stones are gone, the symbols faded. The thing in the woods is still there, waiting, but it's not watching me anymore. I moved to a new city, started a new life. I made new friends, found a job I loved. But I never forgot what happened in Black Hollow. I never forgot the rules. Sometimes, I get messages from people who've heard the stories, who want to know if they're true. I tell them the same thing every time. Don't go into those woods. Don't break the rules. And if you do, be ready to leave something behind. But some people don't listen. Some people need to see for themselves. A few months ago, I got an email from a college student named Jamie. She and her friends were planning a camping trip to Black Hollow, and she wanted to know if the stories were real. I told her everything I knew, sent her copies of Alex's notebook, the rules, the warnings. I begged her not to go. She thanked me, promised to be careful. A week later, I saw her name in the news. Missing, last seen at the edge of Black Hollow. Her friends said she wandered off in the middle of the night, following a voice only she could hear. They found a circle of stones near her campsite, the symbols carved deep into the earth. I tried to reach out to her family, to tell them what I knew, but they didn't want to listen. They said she'd just gotten lost, that she'd turn up eventually. But I knew better. The woods never let you go. Not really. Sometimes, late at night, I sit by my window and listen to the wind. If I listen closely, I can hear the singing, soft and distant, calling to me from the darkness. I close my eyes, remember the rules, and pray that I never have to go back. You might think, after everything I've told you, that I'd never set foot near Black Hollow again. You'd be right, at least, that's what I told myself. But the truth is, the woods have a way of calling you back, even when you know better. Even when you've seen what waits in the shadows. It started with a letter. Not an email, not a text, but an actual letter slipped under my apartment door in the middle of the night. The envelope was unmarked, the paper thick and rough, like something from another time. Inside was a single sentence, written in a shaky hand. You left something behind. I stared at the words for a long time, my mind racing. I'd left everything I could think of at the altar, my memories, my pain, the things that mattered most. What else could the woods want from me? For days, I tried to ignore it. I went to work, met friends, tried to lose myself in the noise of the city. But the letter haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the clearing, the altar, the thing in the woods. I heard the singing, soft and insistent, calling me back. I started having dreams, vivid, unsettling dreams of wandering through the forest, searching for something I couldn't name. In the dreams, the trees pressed close, their branches reaching for me, their roots tangling around my feet. I'd wake up gasping, my sheets twisted, the taste of earth and moss in my mouth. One night, I woke to find another circle of stones on my bedroom floor, the symbols carved deep into the wood. In the center, a single black feather. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands, and felt a chill run through me. The woods weren't done with me. Not yet, but I knew what I had to do. I packed a bag, lighter this time, just the essentials. I left a note for a friend, just in case. And then, before I could change my mind, I drove back to Black Hollow. The forest was different this time. The air was heavier, the trees darker, the silence deeper. It felt like stepping into a memory, one that had been waiting for me to return. I followed the path to the clearing, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of leaves. The altar was still there, the circles of stones perfectly arranged. But something was different. The air was colder, the shadows deeper. I could feel eyes on me, watching from the darkness that I knelt by the altar, the black feather in my hand. I placed it in the center, whispering a prayer I didn't understand. The woods were silent, waiting. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the singing began, soft at first, then louder, filling the clearing with its haunting melody. I closed my eyes, letting the sound wash over me. When I opened them, the thing in the woods was standing before me. It was different this time, taller, its eyes burning brighter, its presence heavier. It stared at me, unblinking, as if searching for something inside me. I felt a wave of fear, but also something else, regret, longing, a sense of unfinished business. I realized, in that moment, what I'd left behind. My guilt. I'd survived when others hadn't. I'd escaped, but I'd left my friends, my memories, my pain behind. I tried to move on, to forget, but the woods remembered. I knelt before the thing, tears streaming down my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." The thing watched me, its eyes softening, just for a moment. Then, slowly, it reached out a long, clawed hand and touched my forehead. A wave of memories crashed over me. My friends, the laughter around the campfire, the fear in their eyes, the sound of footsteps in the dark. I saw Sam, Grace, Jamie, all the others who'd been lost to the woods. I felt their pain, their fear, their longing to be remembered. The thing withdrew its hand, and the singing faded. The air grew warmer, the shadows receded. I stood, my body trembling, my heart heavy. The thing in the woods nodded, a slow, deliberate movement, and then melted into the shadows. I left the clearing, the path easier to find, the air lighter. I knew, as I walked, that I'd finally given the woods what they wanted, not an object, not a memory, but the truth. The acknowledgement of what I'd lost and what I'd left behind. When I reached my car, the sun was rising, the sky painted with streaks of gold and pink. I sat behind the wheel, exhausted, and wept. This time, when I returned home, the circles of stones were gone. The symbols faded. The singing stopped, but the memories remained. I started writing, pouring my experiences onto the page. I shared my story, not just online, but in person, at support groups, at libraries, at late-night gatherings of people who'd seen things they couldn't explain. I listened to their stories, their pain, their longing to be understood. I realized, in time, that I wasn't alone. There were others, people who'd survived the woods, who carried the same scars. We formed a community, a network of survivors, bound by our shared experiences. That we made a pact to remember those who'd been lost, to warn others, to never let the woods claim another soul. Sometimes, people would come to us, desperate for answers. We'd tell them the rules, share our stories, offer what comfort we could. Some listened, some didn't. But the woods were always there, waiting. One night, a young man named Tyler came to one of our meetings. He was quiet, withdrawn, his eyes haunted. He told us he'd lost his sister in Black Hollow, that he'd heard the singing, seen the thing in the woods. He asked us what to do, how to bring her back. That we told him the truth. Some things can't be undone. Some losses are permanent. But we offered him what we could, understanding, support, the knowledge that he wasn't alone. Tyler came back, week after week, slowly opening up, sharing his story. In time, he found peace, not closure, but acceptance. That's all any of us can hope for. That I still dream of the woods, still hear the singing when the night is quiet. But I'm not afraid anymore. I know the rules. I know what the woods want. And I know I'm not alone. If you're listening to this, if you're thinking of going camping in Black Hollow, remember this. The woods are beautiful, but they're also hungry. They remember everything you bring and everything you leave behind. That if you go, follow the rules. Respect the woods. And if you hear the singing, don't follow it. But most of all, Remember those who didn't make it out. Remember their stories. Carry them with you, so the woods can't claim them forever. Because in the end, that's all we have, our stories, our memories, the truth of what we've seen. And sometimes, that's enough. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I'd never gone camping in those woods. If I'd ignored the dare, stayed home, let the stories remain just that, stories. But then I remember the faces of those I met along the way. The people who found me because I spoke up, because I refused to let the truth be buried. Maybe that's the real reason the woods let me go. Not because I was brave, or clever, or lucky, but because I was willing to remember. There's a power in memory, in refusing to let the darkness swallow everything whole. The woods thrive on secrets, on silence, on the things we're too afraid to say out loud. But when we share our stories, when we shine a light into the shadows, we take some of that power back. I still get messages, sometimes, from people who've heard whispers about Black Hollow. They want to know if the stories are true, if the rules really matter, if there's any way to come back from what they've seen. I tell them what I can. I tell them to trust their instincts, to respect the woods, to never go alone. But most of all, I tell them to remember, to hold on to the people they love, to the memories that matter, to the truth of what they've experienced. Because the woods are always hungry. They're always waiting for someone to forget, to let their guard down, to break the rules. And when that happens, they take what they want, sometimes a memory, sometimes a person, sometimes something you can't ever get back. But if you remember, if you carry the stories with you, the woods lose some of their power. They can't erase what's been seen, can't silence what's been spoken. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to keep them at bay. I don't know if I'll ever go back to Black Hollow. Part of me wants to, just to prove that I can. But another part knows that some places are better left alone, that some doors shouldn't be opened twice. I've made my peace with what happened, with what I lost, and what I found. I've learned to live with the scars, to let them remind me of what matters. If you're still listening, if you're still thinking about going camping in those woods, I hope you'll remember this. The stories are real. The rules matter. And the woods never forget. Maybe you'll be lucky. Maybe you'll make it out with nothing more than a few strange memories and a story to tell. But if you hear the singing, if you see the eyes in the darkness, if you find a circle of stones where there shouldn't be one, turn back. Don't look, don't listen, don't follow. And if you do make it out, tell someone what you saw. Don't let the woods keep your story. Don't let them win. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do. We remember. We warn. We hope that it's enough. So if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of Black Hollow, staring into the trees as the sun sets and the shadows grow long, ask yourself what you're willing to leave behind. Ask yourself what you're willing to remember, and whatever you do, don't go camping in those woods. If you made it this far, thank you for listening and for remembering. The woods are full of stories, but not all of them are meant to be heard. If you ever find yourself drawn to places like Black Hollow, remember the rules, trust your instincts, and never go alone. If you have your own story, or if you've experienced something you can't explain, share it in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear it. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another story that Reddit doesn't want you to read. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, don't go camping in those woods.